going on, guys? Beaver Creek Woodcraft here. I got challenged to the one stick fire, and I also had a friend asking me if I'd demonstrate flint and steel, so that way he can hopefully learn the technique a little easier and do it on his first time. So today we're going to do that. I talked about my ideas on a one stick fire before. It's not necessarily a survival skill, it's more of a test of your skill level, in my mind. Anybody that has to have a fire going isn't going to limit themselves to using just one stick. So obviously this is more of a test of skill and resourcefulness than it is a test of, or like a method that you should use in an emergency, for instance. One of the things I like to do when I've done this before, it's something I have practiced, is I like to try and find a stick, and this is a little bit bigger than what I typically use, but I wanted to find a stick that has bark on it, that has inner bark that I can utilize to make a bird's nest. Finding that can be pretty difficult sometimes. Usually when I practiced this skill before, it was because I stumbled across a proper branch, usually a piece of tulip poplar about yay long, golf ball diameter. Dead branch would have good inner bark that you could use to make a bird's nest. That way it literally is a one stick fire from beginning to end. But obviously, you shouldn't go searching for that. If you're borderline hypothermic, you shouldn't be stomping around the woods looking for that perfect stick to make a one stick fire. This is a test of skill, and I like to try and utilize the stick that I find to do everything from the tinder bundle all the way up to a sustainable full fire. So this one here today, I'm not sure what species of wood this is, but the bark is kind of sorta. It's got some fiber to it, but it's definitely not like tulip poplar bark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this into manageable lengths, something that's small enough that it's easy to baton. And we're going to quarter some of this down, make a few feather sticks, and then we're going to utilize the bark from this to try and make a tinder bundle. I do have some extra fuel that is not part of the challenge that I harvested from before, because I'm going to cook a little lunch out here, and we got potatoes and sausage in the bush pot today. So that's the plan. All right, Silky Saw to the rescue. Down in the valley below this ridge, there's a whole bunch of ash trees, big ash trees that all died during the emerald ash borer. And that's one of the easiest tinder sources I've found, because usually the bark is falling right off of it anyway, and the inner bark is already kind of broken down. The problem with hunting dead trees with bark intact to try and utilize tinder is that it's either totally far gone and it just falls apart and crumbles in your hand because it's so rotted, or it's not quite dry enough. Trying to find it, all in one stick can be a task. Finding a dry dead stick with bark on it's not so hard. Finding one that has bark that you can actually break the fibers up into usable tinder, a little bit different story, at least from what I see. I'm in a particularly nasty part of northern Ohio where it's almost like Dagobah. If you guys are Star Wars fans, where Yoda lives, it's just tangles of vines and brush and swamps and nastiness, and we don't get a lot of really good tree growth around here. Some of these flatter areas where it dries out a little bit, we get some decent sized trees and stuff, but tulip poplar is not very common. In this particular area, it's really a lot of sassafras, oaks and maples, ton of grapevine. So some of the things you see people typically do in a bushcraft or a survival class or in the books and the manuals and stuff, a lot of that stuff doesn't necessarily translate to your particular environment. So that's why it's important to get out and practice this stuff and figure out what works for you and what resources you can actually find in your environment. park. Got our cheater stick, as Dan Wowak calls it. I didn't know what it was called, but I've been using that like that for a long time. Of course, you can always split wood sideways like this, but just like they say, old habits die hard. Yeah, I'm not sure what kind of wood that is. Sure looks almost like elm. I mean ash. But it ain't rotted. And it's relatively soft for a hardwood, so should be pretty easy to get some good feather curls off of that. Again, I'm gonna do what most people say you shouldn't do and use a rat tang knife that's not even peened through the end. Do a little batoning with it. When you're batoning, you know, people argue about batoning a lot. And I don't necessarily get it. I think the people that try and baton a rat tang knife through a 10-inch log are asking for trouble. But I don't see anything wrong with batoning golf ball diameter pieces of wood down into smaller kindling. It is a lot safer and easier to do with a knife and a baton when you're talking about small stuff like this than it is to try and break this small stuff up with an axe. And really, it's actually probably easier. There we go. I didn't have to go chasing anything. It all stayed right here in my hand. I'm not really abusing my knife. So, to me, that kind of batoning is totally acceptable. The funny thing about this knife is that this is done in a very traditional style where the tang is actually only about 3/4 of the length of the blade. The tang is only about 3/4 of the length of the blade, and there's a hole drilled, and then the tang is sharp like a nail and is driven into the very bottom of the handle, and then it's wedged with spruce or pine wedges on either side to fill in and tighten up the gap on the side of the blade from the hole. And there's no glue, there's no epoxy, there's no pins, there's no nothing. That's the only thing holding it in this wood handle. And I had this knife for a few years now. Jamie Boggs took it to a Randall adventure training class and batoned it a little bit and used it for about a month or so. And I've been batoning with it, small stuff like this, since I got it, and it's still rock solid. Goes to show you that, you know, just because it doesn't use all the latest and greatest and modern adhesives or, you know, micarta and everything else, it's still a very tough knife and still very strong. And I made this to fit my hand specifically, so obviously it's my favorite knife. Just simple. Let's see how it carves a feather here. Don't judge me on my feathers. I am far from a feather stick expert. It's not bad. Let's bark that wants to come off. So there you go, that's what you want. It falls off nice and easy. Let's try and process a little bit of this down, see if it's even going to work. I think it's going to be kind of rough here. Peel that outer bark off. That's what I love about all that dead standing ash. You literally just walk up to it, grab a chunk of bark off the dead tree, grab the fibers already fluffed up and loose off of there, and usually they're still very strong. They have a lot of strength left in them. They're not quite rotted, but they're definitely separated from the bark, from the outer bark. And tussle it up in your hands a little bit. That stuff's ready to go. It's not like trying to break down white cedar bark or something like that, which living next to a river kind of spoils you on having to process down tinder, because if you live next to a flowing water source and it floods at any time, after a flood, all the bark and bits of crap and stuff that falls into the river and gets washed down, well, the water will break that stuff up for you, and then it dumps it, deposits it up in the brush and the small trees on the edges of the river. So it really does you a lot of good. It saves you from having to, you know, by the time the water level goes back down, that stuff has been hanging up in the wind, in the air, and it's usually nice and dry. It's already fluffed up and broken down for you. Makes life pretty easy. There's our nest, which is not awesome, but not terrible at the same time. Gather some of this fine stuff, put some on here, put a little bit in there. So we got our coarse stuff just holding the whole nest together, kind of. Like I said, this is pretty crappy stuff. Okay, so this is the real striker. This one is wrapped in a little bit of jute twine to give it a little bit better grip. Also doubles as an emergency bird's nest. If you really needed it, you could break down this jute. Jute makes great material to practice with if you guys are just learning how to use this. But this is just a steel. You got to have a piece of flint to strike off of it. So I got a piece of English black flint, and the idea is that you hold the striker. I've done it that way and thrown sparks onto a piece of char cloth. The other way to do is to take a piece of char cloth and pinch it on the top of the stone with your thumb, and then the sparks shave off the steel and they land on top of it and ignites it. I just recently started trying that. It works really well. So inside my char tin here, this is one of those screw top pellet tins, which I like because I like to use punk wood a lot of the time, and I found if you just have a slip fit tin, it can pop the top off in the fire. These screw top tins, they'll stay shut. Obviously, if your char tin pops open in the fire, it just all bursts into flames and you gotta redo it again. Inside here, I got a small all metal pencil sharpener from John McCann at Survival Resources. It's a great little thing to throw in your kit, and it's not like the little cheap plastic Chinese ones. I have a magnifying lens in a protective little pouch here that goes inside the tin, and then right now I just have some char cloth. Like I said, I typically try and use char punk wood because I like how it holds a coal for a very long time. Let's see if we can get this stuff to go here. There we go. All right, we got our char going. Put that in our bird's nest. I'd be willing to call that a sustainable fire. Flames above the fuel. It's already developing a good little coal base. A little bit of wind to help it out. Alright, so we took one stick that was about a yard long and golf ball diameter, and we broke it down into small pieces with our saw, split it down and batoned it down, made some feather sticks, and utilized the bark for a bird's nest to make a sustainable fire. I'd say that is probably as close to a true one-stick fire as you can get. Pretty happy with that, even though that bird's nest was pretty terrible. I mean, as far as bird's nests go, that would not be in my top 10 list. And we got a little moisture in our wood. Show this to you guys. So this is my Pathfinder bush pot, and the way that I've been carrying it like this with stuff inside, I would tie off to the bale and then come underneath, loop it up between the handles through the loop here, and then tie it off here. Real simple. It tends to want to stay in between these handles. It doesn't like to slip off too easy, so it stays down. And I haven't gotten a bush pot bag yet for it, which I really should, because when this thing gets all sooty, it makes a mess out of your inside of your bag. But I'll show you guys. Just untie that there, bring that up. There's your bush pot. Potatoes, cooksa. There's something magical about a fire, that no matter which direction the wind's blowing when you start it, invariably it'll turn right towards you, just like that. Anybody has any tips or tricks on how to avoid that one, I'd be all ears, because it doesn't seem, no matter how carefully I set it up, I just got that smoke coming right in my face. Well, guys, I call that a successful one-stick fire. Thanks to my buddy Jamie for tagging me in this and giving me a reason to come out and try and film something in the woods. It has been a while, and I apologize to those of you out there that are watching, that have been waiting for more content. Not like I have a ton of subscribers anyway, but there's a few diehards out there. We're supposed to tag somebody else in this when we're done with it, so I'm going to tag my buddy Jim Leighty. I'll put a link in the description to his YouTube channel. If you guys are not following him yet, if you're not subscribed to his channel, you need to. Puts out some really, really good content. I'll also put a link in the description to the original challenge video by JW Apothecary, so you guys can check that out. JW is a master herbalist, and the guy really knows his stuff when it comes to that. And then, of course, the original inspiration for the One Stick Fire Challenge comes from my buddy Jamie Boggs at Burning River Bushcraft. So, yet again, if you guys aren't following him, he puts out content all the time and is always really good stuff. So, today is actually my birthday. So, this was a hell of a way to spend an afternoon. Come out here and do a little firecraft skills and cook up sausage and potatoes, which is an excellent meal, by the way. You get yourself like a spicy andouille sausage and throw it in there with potatoes. You don't even need any seasoning. It just makes its own just from the sausage itself. Really easy meal to make. You just got to have sustainable fire long enough to cook those sliced potatoes, and it's an easy one. And it's damn good. So, but in spirit of being birthday today, I decided to bring a little Glenlivet 12 out here and have a taste. Good scotch always tastes better when it's out of one of these. A friend of mine in Finland sent me this, and it's beautiful. He got it up in Lapland, and it's made from birch burl like they're supposed to be. And I didn't think it was that big of a deal until I got a good one like this. It was given to me, and you start to appreciate it. You get the flavor of pretty much everything you ever put in here a little bit every time. So if you put bourbon in here, scotch in here, coffee, tea, I was drinking a lot of licorice tea out of this, so it takes on a little bit of that licorice spice flavor. It's kind of interesting. It's a cup with character and a story. And really happy to have this. I've actually grown really attached to this thing. I didn't think I would, you know, but it's very nice. So, to my friends out there, wish you good health. I appreciate all you folks watching me and dealing with my level of weird. And I guess I'll see you the next time I get around to making one of these videos. So, good luck.